Have you ever created a blueprint? What about you? Have you ever designed the future? Creating a space where you can figure out how to do a much better job of how do you respect the whole person? Getting to know them in their identity and their fullness. Up until now, many of us haven't. We've relied upon institutions, healthcare systems, our employers, government agencies, we rely on them to make things happen for us. But we need to create a blueprint. So today we're going to do just that. Create a blueprint that allows us to see a better way to respect the whole person. I'm going to give you 3 things to consider in your blueprint. First thing is this: doing a better job of saying yes when it matters most to the other person. And what I mean by that is not just saying yes because it happens to be your day off, but saying yes even when it's inconvenient for you. Saying yes even when it means that you might have to give up a commitment, delay some self-gratification because somebody needs you now. That is the true evidence of whether or not you are able to value and see the whole person, because you're putting them in front of you. Second thing, being more curious about someone. Curious to the extent that you understand their story, that you get an intimate conversation with them, that you're listening to who they are as a person, that you know what they might talk about at the barbershop, debate at the kitchen table, or at a family reunion. In fact, if you were so concerned and so curious, you might be able to tell their story in the absence of them in the room, because you know it that well. That is 2/3 of the way of being able to care for the whole person. Let me give an example about how I'm trying to model some of this right now. A few months ago, I was invited to be a part of an organization where I'm essentially trying to help them think about how can you be more equitable, more fair. Now, this organization, to be really honest, has a well-documented history of being unfair and being discriminate, to the point that they have been called and are often referred to as the last plantation. So I have this opportunity to work alongside folks who are trying to be curious and understand who people are. Now, just for context, just to give you a big picture of this group, we're talking about an organization that has wide reach. And in fact, I can guarantee you that every meal that you've ever had has been something that has come through this organization, without question. The one thing that we're actually now trying to focus on in the food economy through this organization is the work around agriculture, particularly black farmers. There was once upon a time that black farmers totaled 1 million people in this country. That number has declined significantly. In fact, most recent estimates are not just 35,000, but it may be closer to 20. Through a series of policies and failures that have happened to the black farming community, black farmers have seen a diminishment of their land acreage, which at one point in time used to amass 16 million acres. In fact, between 1950 and 1969, black farmers lost a total of 6 million acres alone. That is the equivalent of losing 820 acres every single day for 19 years. So do the visual. Imagine Central Park. Now, I'm a New Yorker, so that's an iconic thing for me, but you don't have to be from New York to know what Central Park looks like. Imagine that size of your farmland. When you go to bed at night, it's there. When you wake up, it's gone. Point is, we have been failed by many institutions who have not allowed black farmers to take care of their property and their land. And if you put numbers behind it, black farmers have lost a total of $326 billion with a B in generational wealth because of that land loss. So now, if farming isn't something that resonates with you in terms of what you could do with that information, let's take another institution. Let's take the institution of school systems. School systems today are going through a complete change. And I mean the change specifically around banned books. Up until now, we know of 100 counties across the country, school districts, that cover about 3,000 schools, that touch about 2 million kids, who are now subject to books that are no longer going to be in circulation. And it's not a secret the type of books that are not going to be in circulation. The 6 major books that are on that list across the country, across those 26 states and counting, happen to be books that have been written by or have a character featuring a BIPOC individual, Black, Indigenous, people of color, or queer, or LGBTQ kids. So the truth of the matter is, we're creating a vacuum, an emptiness, to have a conversation with young people, for them to have a conversation with other kids about who the whole person is, because they don't know who it is. Right now, they're subject to whatever they see in school, absent history of individuals. Now, this helps me pivot to the third point. The third point is this. When we're thinking about how do we make sure that we care for the whole person, let's consider this. Let's consider us being a first responder. And in that scenario of the school district, you could be a first responder. You could say at a parent-teacher meeting, the next time we talk about levies for tax increases to build gyms or to build football fields, the answer is no, not until you put school books back in circulation that matter for my children. That's a first responder. So between being curious, coupled with saying yes when it matters most to other people, think about how you can also respond to the situations that happen right now, in real time. Let me give you an example of how I've tried to be a first responder. I spent some time many years ago, in fact, a few pounds ago, if you look at that slide, trying to get young people to figure out how they could create their own blueprint. I walked into an organization that was, best way to describe it, on fire. Walking out of a $50 million lawsuit, claims of discrimination, and any ism you can put in between. So as a firefighter, the analogy of a first responder, you walk straight in. You don't worry about what's going to harm you. You try to figure out what you can learn from the mess that you have now walked into and encountered. So behind door number 1 in this example, I saw an interview guide that essentially said, let's hire based on the right fit. Who's fit? What does the look like? Oh, behind door number 2, the image of a model, 99% of the time, white male, blonde hair, blue eyes. That was the look. That was the subtle message of what we're trying to go after. Behind door number 3, bookmark word was, think about the American iconic classic look. Point that I'm trying to share with you is this. There are buzzwords, there are code words. There are things that should be signs for us to figure out when we say the whole person, sometimes those words don't include all people. They're often indicative of a group that's a majority. So what I'm trying to share with you in this context is we have to think about what we see in front of us. For us to get this right, to change the direction of institutions that are failing us, we've got to figure out how to take some of that responsibility on our own. I mean, let's be honest. We didn't create these places, but we've inherited them. So if we wanted to turn over to something else that is more positive for someone else, we've got to do better by that. When you look at that photo, when I put this talk together, I realized that I took that picture 10 years ago this month. On the corner, it says October 25th, 2012. Those words that are on there, I'll share them out loud, speak to being an ally, being inclusive, being thoughtful, being curious, trying to really get a sense of who someone is and what their story is about, so that you can know who the whole person is. Because absent being able to do that, we can't make changes. So if I leave you with a few things, I'd say this. Right now, we could all say, in the case of the black farmer example, how can we donate land to black farmers? How can we support causes that matter to black farming communities so that they can start to turn the tide a bit? How can we be more active in our school systems and our school districts to make sure that we lobby for things that allow books to be read that are broad speaking about other people? How can we think about, let's say if you're a philanthropist, to give differently, to give to a different community need? Or if you're in the healthcare space, how can you think about, you know what, I need to better understand the social determinants of someone's health? It's being curious. It's being thoughtful and saying yes when it matters most to the other person. But it's also about being of first responder, putting yourself at the center of the trouble and the challenges, because those failures will continue to haunt us unless we step up and try something different. Thank you very much.